page 46. Our family was complete 2 years later when my brother David was born on November 14th, 1952. Luckily, Dad was in New York. He'd been at the hospital for the births of Jackie and me and didn't plan to miss the birth of his third child either. After the Dodgers lost to the Cardinals, Dad rushed from Ebbets Field to Doctors Hospital in time for David's birth. Mom got sick and couldn't go home from the hospital with David. A family friend, Willett Bailey, came to stay with us at this point. She planned to stay until after my mother was well, but ended up living with us until my brothers and I were out of the house. Each March, we traveled with Mom to Florida for spring training and exhibition games. Since Jim Crow laws were still in effect, we stayed at a motel in the Black community while the other Dodger families stayed in a luxurious beach hotel across town. Too young to know the difference, but my parents resented being treated differently. Eventually, the Dodgers bought their own facility in Vero Beach where Black players and white players and their families stayed together. Take a minute to read the captions. Turn to page 48. By the time I was 5, Dad had been playing with the Brooklyn Dodgers for 10 years. During that time, he'd helped the team reach the World Series 6 times. In 1949, he led the league in batting with a .342 average and received the National League's Most Valuable Player award. From 1947 to 1953, Dad ranked 4th in the majors in batting average, .319, second in runs scored, .773, and first in stolen bases, 166. Of his nearly 5,000 career at-bats, 51% were from the cleanup slot. The 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers had the best season. After yearly disappointments of losing the World Championship to the New York Yankees, the Dodgers and my dad won the World Series. Wait till next year, their annual mantra finally meant victory. Take a moment to read the captions. Turn to page 50. A civil rights champion. After the 1956 baseball season, it was clear that things had changed. Branch Rickey had left the Dodgers, and at age 37, Dad had passed his peak playing days. On December 13, 1956, the Brooklyn Dodgers announced that my father had been traded to their rival, the New York Giants. Dad played along with the news of the trade, saying he'd give the Giants all that he had to give. The truth was, my father was aware that his baseball playing days were almost over. In anticipation of his retirement, he was investigating other opportunities. As the Dodgers announced the trade, my father stepped up his negotiations with the coffee manufacturer and restaurant chain Chock full of Nuts for a career outside of baseball. News of the trade sent baseball fans into an uproar. Angry letters poured into the Dodgers' offices and into our home. The trade hit us hard, too. Dad had wanted to retire as a Brooklyn Dodger. He was angry that the team, to which he'd been loyal, hadn't even bothered to consult him on their plans to trade him. Without letting on that he intended to retire rather than accept the trade, Dad's agent made a deal with Look magazine. They got the exclusive rights to print my father's retirement story. In the January 1957 issue of Look, Dad announced his retirement from baseball. The Giants tried to get my father to change his mind by offering him more money. Dad turned them down. He accepted a job with Chock full of Nuts in New York City. At home, we celebrated the news. Major League Baseball players spend 9 months of the year traveling, and we knew that if Dad retired, he'd be home with us more. So, as Dad prepared for life as a commuter, we imagined having him home at most nights in time for dinner. We liked the idea. Take a moment to read the captions. Turn to page 52. Dad exchanged his Dodgers uniform for a corporate suit and tie in the winter of 1957. He became vice president of personnel for Chock-full of Nuts. Like lots of others in Stamford, Dad left home each morning at 8 and returned most nights by 6. Not being on the road meant he had time to give motivational speeches, write newspaper columns, raise money for civil rights organizations, join protest marches, speak to youth groups, play golf, and cut the lawn. Dad also agreed to chair the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People Freedom Fund Drive. As NAACP chairman, he traveled around the country raising money for the nation's oldest civil rights organization. The first year of his tour, he helped raise more than $1 million. Dad joined a group of investors and community activists to bring the first black-run bank to Harlem and New York City. They felt that a minority-owned and operated bank was the only way to help rebuild Harlem's predominantly black community. On January 4th, 1965, Freedom National Bank opened on 125th Street. Take a moment to look at the pictures and read the captions. Turn to page 54. On January 23, 1962, my father learned that he'd been elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame on the first round. He was happy and excited. There was a flurry of activity that led up to the July induction ceremonies in Cooperstown, New York. I was 12 at the time and not quite sure what all the hoopla was about. I asked my father what it meant to be chosen for the Hall of Fame. He said it was like being named to the Supreme Court if you were a lawyer. I got the point. Dad's Hall of Fame induction was wonderful. Both of my grandmothers were there with us, along with Branch Rickey and, page 55, many others who had helped my parents throughout my dad's baseball career. Dad was the first African American inducted into the Hall. When he was presented with his plaque, he spoke with such pride. I was so happy to be a part of this big day. The following year, we hosted the first of many jazz concerts at our home to raise money for the civil rights movement. The 1963 concert was a fundraiser for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Committee, or SCLC. Take a moment to read the captions. Turn to page 56. During the 1960s, Dad wore many different hats and faced many new challenges. The biggest challenge was his health. Shortly after he retired from baseball, Dad found out he was diabetic. His health problems became more and more serious. Dad was only in his 40s when he had his first heart attack. By his late 40s, his diabetes had left him partially blind. Still, the last 7 years of my dad's life were filled with politics, business, family, friends, and golf. During that time, I married and attended Howard University College of Nursing. My brother David completed high school at Mount Hermon, Massachusetts, and went on to college at Stanford University. Mom taught nursing at Yale. My older brother, Jackie, fought in Vietnam, received a Purple Heart, and then died tragically in a car accident when he was only 24. Page 57. Despite our shock and pain over losing our beloved Jackie, we rallied as a family for what turned out to be our last year with Dad. That year was 1972. It was also the 25th anniversary of Dad's breaking the color barrier. In addition to special times together as a family, we celebrated Dad receiving a number of tributes. The final one took place on October 15th, 1972. Dad threw out the ceremonial pitch during the second game of the World Series in Cincinnati, Ohio. A record crowd was in attendance. An estimated 60 million people watched the ceremony on television. All Major League Baseball teams were now fielding black, white, or Hispanic players, but the diversity stopped there. There were no non-white executives, managers, or general managers in professional baseball. So Dad felt it important that he use his last public address to remind us all that equality was an ongoing struggle. "I'm extremely proud and pleased," Dad said in his World Series speech. "But I'm going to be more pleased and more proud when I look at that third base coaching line one day and see a black face managing in baseball." In addition to his many achievements in sports, my father was awarded the highest honors from civil and human rights organizations, religious groups, and the United States government. From the NAACP's Spingarn Medal to the nation's highest civilian award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, my father's accomplishments on and off the field have been widely recognized. Dad spent his entire life fighting for equality. He won some battles and lost others. He made some mistakes, but he also inspired millions. My father never lost hope or gave in to despair, even when his health failed him. He once said, "A life is not important except for the impact it has on other lives." Dad lived his philosophy. Take a minute to look at the captions.